I just finished up my conversation with Brother Antony Julius Milton, and it was moving for me personally. I hope that you are inspired in how you show up, not even as a leader, as a human being, as a leader over yourself. That's really what this is about. This leadership is about you stepping up to be and daring to be the best version of yourself. This is the Charging Up Leadership Podcast, and I am your host, Heidi Frye. This podcast is all about energizing you from the inside out, inspiring you to plug in, light up, and just be the best version of yourself in how you live and lead. Welcome to the podcast, Antony Julius Milton. I am very excited for our conversation today.
Thank you, Heidi, for inviting me to spend this conversational time with you. Thank you. Pleased to be here.
Yes, it is really great to have you here. And I am ready to dive in if you're ready to dive in. Yes?
All right. Yep.
My first question is actually the fact that you go by Brother Julius or Brother Antony Julius, and yet you are a priest. And so I think that really speaks to the nature of what we're talking about today. That's just an opener. If you have a response to that, great. But otherwise, I'll dive right into that next question. So you tell me, what do you have to say about that?
Most certainly, I think the very title shapes our understanding of who we are and what we do in the world, in the church, as Capuchin brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even though I am an ordained priest in the Catholic Church, I belong to a religious community called Franciscan Capuchins. You know, our initials are OFM Cap, Order of Friars Minor Capuchin. When St. Francis of Assisi founded this movement of brothers, band of brothers who came together to follow St. Francis, to follow Christ in the footsteps of St. Francis, he wanted this community to be a community of brothers inspired by the gospel way of life that Jesus envisions for his followers. And so St. Francis understood the way of life that Jesus envisions in the gospel in two simple terms, which were minority and fraternity. Minority simply meaning simple brothers or lesser brothers, fraternity meaning these brothers will live in community. And those two qualities of being a minor, being a lesser one, and living in community, those two qualities are founded on this identity of brothers. I am a brother to Christ. I am a brother to all the Capuchins that I live with. I am a brother to all the people that I encounter in ministries. And so, in other words, it doesn't put me as a Capuchin. It doesn't put me on an elevated level in front of the people of God. It puts me right with them, which is what the gospel vision is for the humanity, for the church, and of course for the Capuchins. And so there has been a revival in the Capuchin order, especially after the Vatican II, to go back to the roots of our founders, to go back to the roots of the gospel values. And so since the Vatican II, especially from 1980s or so, there is a revival all around the globe among the Capuchins to re-embrace this brother identity.
Yes.
A Capuchin might be a priest, might be a bishop, but the primary foundational identity that shapes our vision for life and ministry in the world, in the church today, is being a brother. And so this is nothing.
I'm sorry, go ahead. You can feel it. You can feel it when you say brother versus father. Even if we're talking about, like the leadership portion of it, it's hierarchical. Mm-hmm. And I do feel that, and I really appreciate mm-hmm. how adamant you have been about mm-hmm. being referred to as brother. So
and that does not mean that it is anything against the hierarchy, anything against my identity as a priest as well, because that's how I minister within the church, where Not every priest can do, you know, everything. There are certain things
Yeah.
that can be done only by the Pope, certain things done only by the cardinals, certain things done only by the priests and bishops. So we do need structures, we do need hierarchy. But I think whatever level of the hierarchy that a minister might be within the church, I think the disposition from which that ministry should be born is always being a brother. And I think that's what St. Francis wanted to emphasize in the
Mhm.
1200s. And that is why it is still relevant. And that is why I think the Capuchins are still around after 800 years.
Terrific. Okay. So diving in, I find it really interesting that your journey, I believe, is a little bit opposite of what a lot of people feel, which is you felt called and inspired to follow this vocation, this life. And while in it, you found leadership, right? And oftentimes people are in leadership and they find a path to their humanness or something else. So, can you please describe your journey?
I think let me start saying I was born and raised in a very small town in the state of Tamil Nadu, Tamilnadu, southeast state in India. So if you put the Michigan map upside down, that forms South India. So I'm from here, you know. So that's where I was born and raised, and I have one older sister. My parents are still alive. We were raised um, in that small town, went to school there, went to the parish school run by the nuns of St. Anne's congregation and the diocesan priests of my home diocese, the Diocese of Kumbakonam in Tamil Nadu. And when I was in my third grade, we had a new pastor in my hometown. And he made a visit to the parish school and visited every class and said, I'm the new pastor. He introduced himself to us. He said, I'm the new pastor of this church and parish and this village. And so from tomorrow onwards, I invite all the Catholics to come for daily mass and daily prayers. I will take attendance, and whoever shows up, every day, I will have some prizes for you. And
Mm.
you can come and be the readers, you can be the altar servers. I'm going to teach you all. We're going to create a nice community around the parish, the life and mission of the parish. And in third grade, I was really attracted by that. And all of my friends, we started going to the church for daily mass, daily prayers, rosaries, every morning, every evening. We hung around the church. Um, and just getting involved there, seeing him as the leader of the community. And he was not just pastor of the Catholics, he was the pastor for the Hindu brothers and sisters and other denominational Christians in the village. And as you know, India is a very diverse country, diversity of language, cultures, religions, you name it, right? And so in my hometown, I would say 50% of the population, could be Hindus, 40% Catholics, 10%, other Christian denominations and Muslim brothers and sisters. And we had one school and all of us went to the same school. So, and if you look at my uh, peer percentage, my classmates' friends, 50% Hindu friends and 40% Catholic friends, 10% Muslim and other denominational Christian friends. And I think that was such a great blessing, not to see the other as an enemy or as a threat, but someone who can challenge me, who can, complement what I don't have in terms of, how I understand life, how I understand world and God and spirituality, etc. So he was a pastor of all, and then his leadership over the community was a true inspiration. And so I started saying in my third grade, when I was asked, what do you want to become? I said, I want to be a priest like him. And, of course, the waning and waxing of the desire was part of my growing up. But then when I finished my high school, I again was inspired to embrace this way of life. And so there was a Capuchin parish in the city where my great uncle belonged. And so I was able to go and visit him when when I would go for summer vacations. And then he would take me to the Capuchin parish, and I saw the Capuchin brothers, on every time I went there. And my great uncle was a volunteer in that Capuchin parish, so he got to go inside the friary and help out, and I could see the inside picture a little bit. And those were also inspiring moments. And so I decided to join the Capuchins after my 12th grade, and then I did my initial stages of formation of learning English, the first 2 years, and then doing novitiate, and then doing my bachelor's degree in philosophy and English literature. And then I did 1 year of community experience, getting to know the Capuchin way of life with other brothers. And then in the year 2017, there was a program called International Collaboration, that was initiated between the Midwest Capuchin province and the Tamil Nadu Capuchin province of Amala Annai. And part of that, it's a program initiated by the general in Rome, the head of the Capuchins, because we have lack of personnel and brothers in the Midwest. We have a lot of brothers in Tamil Nadu, so we were able to share personnel from Tamil Nadu to come and live and help with ministries in the Midwest. So part of that, I was invited to come to the Midwest to do theology. And then after ordination, help with the ministries in the Midwest for some years, and then eventually to go back to my home province. So part of that, I came in the fall of 2017. I came to Chicago to study at the Catholic Theological Union, where Pope Leo XIV also studied. So I did my MDiv, Masters of Divinity, and Masters of Arts in theology, systematic theology, and moral theology. So that's how I got there, and I was ordained in 2022 April, and then since then I've been ministering at the Capuchin Retreat Center, which is where you encountered me. So
Yeah, right. Well, that's fantastic. I just have to do a quick dip into Pope Leo the 14th. Pretty cool.
yeah,
Yeah. And the
it's
fact
an
that you
honor.
were at the same location and that you taught at the same place, that's terrific. Any thoughts or comments about his
It's such a
ordination?
great privilege, and it's a great responsibility as well. You know, when we have someone who is the head of the church from the school that I studied, even though he studied decades before I was born.
Sure.
But still, I can say this with pride now, but then it also is it also lays tremendous responsibility on me, in terms of the conduct of my life, and
Mhm.
how do I be a minister,
Right.
with the fact that I was trained in the same school that trained Leo the 14th in the initial stages of his formation. Of course, he
Mhm,
studied in
mhm.
other colleges and universities as well after that. But yeah. So it's a privilege, a blessing, and a responsibility.
For sure. For sure. So when we were talking about, having this conversation, you used a word I had never heard before,
Hmm.
and that was synod, Synod. And
Hmm.
I am hoping, because you linked it to leadership and started to tell me some things about, this kind of leadership, I was intrigued. We didn't get into it too much, so I'm hoping you can at least so let's start with the explanation of that word.
The word is called synodality,
Hmm.
Synodality, synodality. The word from its Greek origin, if you apply those, etymological meaning, it simply means, a path together. And when we put those two etymological words together, the meaning that we get is journeying together, journeying together. And this is something that I encountered, a word and a concept that I encountered when I was doing my master's degree at CTU, Catholic Theological Union in Chicago, and which intrigued me, attracted me more. And it was giving me an image of the church that was so comforting, encouraging, and healing. And that's what the church is supposed to be in the world, a presence of comfort, healing, and a spiritual encouragement, journeying together. And so I obviously wanted to read more about it. I took a couple of classes that talked about synodality, and then, of course, with my master's degree, I was on the research track, so I decided to do my research on the term synodality, and I wanted to do my licentiate thesis on synodality. And then the more that I read about it, the name that I kept hearing about was Pope Francis.
Mm.
And then, as a research student, we go into the footnotes, right? And then when I read Pope Francis, when I look at the footnotes he used, and he was referring a lot back to Pope Benedict XVI, and his contributions to synodality and synodal procedures in the church. And then when I read Pope Benedict XVI, and then his footnotes talked about his predecessors, Pope John Paul II, and then John Paul II talks about Pope Paul VI, and then Pope Paul VI goes back to John the 23rd. And all these popes invariably have referenced back and forth the 16 documents of the Vatican II, especially the 4 constitutional documents of the Vatican II, which is where the idea of synodality is refreshed and renewed in the modern times, in the modern language of understanding the role of the church, the presence and the ministry, the being and doing of the church as journeying together in the world, not as a judge of the world, but journeying with the world, not about the world, not under the world, but journeying with the world. And that really kind of shapes the way that we understand the role of the church in the world today. If that's the role of the church as an institution in the world today, it shapes the understanding of the role of the pastors, the bishops, the priests, the deacons, the popes, the cardinals in the world today. If the church as an institution is called to be something that is called to walk with the world, journey together with the world, not about the world, not under the world, but walking with the world while always pointing out to the world, here's the grace of God that's available to us, that becomes the foundation for synodal type of leadership in the church today. And that was my focus. And I wanted to bring out the idea, this is not in my thesis, my main focus was to present that this idea is present from the 1st century onwards in some shape or form. But in the modern times, Vatican II was able to retrieve that and explain that and teach that in modern contemporary language of leaderships, collaboration, synergy, working together, ministering together, and all those concepts that are prevalent, but which are always there, in the gospel, And my favorite realization in the process of doing that thesis was recognizing that Jesus, both the Son of God and Son of Man, both human and divine, he could have done it all by himself, right? He could have redeemed the world by a word, and he could have done a miracle on the apostles so that they will get him all the time. They will understand him all the time, or they would be flawless in their ministry. Could have done that. But I don't think that was what God wanted. I think God wanted to collaborate with humans. Jesus, the Son of God, wanted to collaborate with humans in terms of his ministry to the world. God could have done it all by himself, but I think God wants us to collaborate with him. And there lies the foundation for leadership of togetherness, walking with as the definition for Christian leadership.
I have 2 paths right now, and I'm deciding which one to go down. In terms of, now I'm going to do the other one. Okay, so you just said something about he could have done it all himself. And there's something in there that speaks to me about a problem I see quite often with my clients, which is with human beings, is that desire to be perfect. And how not perfect we are and how okay that is.
Absolutely. We can fake it all our lives
Mm-hmm.
and run ahead with life thinking that I can be perfect and everyone around me should be perfect. It
Mm-hmm.
could be in families and relationships, in workplace, you name it. You and I can fake it. But when the reality will hit someday, at least Sister Death will hit in the head and tell, you're not perfect, you're not eternal.
Right, right.
I think that's the beauty of our faith. The Catholic Church teaches us in terms of how we understand redemption. In terms of redemption, the Church reminds us, you and I are redeemed ultimately by the mercy of God, not because of all of our good works here and there. And even if you and I put together all the good works that you and I have done so far, are in our entire life, I don't think you and I will be able to buy our salvation with the good works that we have done. And so the comfort in that is that, the redemption, the eternal life is a gift from God. And our effort to be better and good and holy is simply a loving response to that gift. That's all. You and I are not making a down payment every time we do a good work. And sometimes, I'm saying this, but there are times unconsciously I approach my spirituality thinking that, I'm making a down payment, by doing all this
Sure,
good work,
sure.
and that can be applied to leadership too. If I expect that my staff, the people that I work with, should be flawless, and I can make mistakes in my leadership approach,
Which then points to another concept called authenticity
hmm
and how important that is in leadership and also,
hmm
to live our best life, right?
hmm And a
Okay.
lot of modern contemporary studies on leadership and in the books that I have read, have pointed that out. Maybe not in the spiritual language or Christian language that we are sharing right now, but the research has shown the importance of being vulnerable and authentic and acknowledging the mistakes, even if you're the on the toppest level of a company
Hmm.
or a job or institution, you know.
Hmm. So when I first heard you talk about this concept, it reminded me of servant leadership. So,
Mhm.
and would you call leadership or synodal, or can you use that word again and then
Mhm.
compare it? What is the difference with servant leadership?
Mhm. Synodal is
Synodal.
how I pronounce, synod, the word synod of bishops,
Mhm.
coming together, talking about problems and making decisions together. And that is a word from which the noun synodality is born.
Thank you.
So when I speak of synodal leadership, again, recognizing that the leader is not apart from the people he or she serves. The leader is called to walk with the team, but that does not negate the leadership role, right? It doesn't get rid of the responsibility of making the final call and owning the final call. But how do we get there to that? What do we do before we make that final call is what I understand as synodal leadership. You know, Obviously I have the power to make decisions as a leader.
Mhm.
If you talk about it in the church as a priest, as a bishop, as pope, as cardinals, you have certain amount of power that's given to you canonically by the fact that you are a priest. I can go to a parish and say, what, from this week onwards, this is what we are doing, and I don't think it can be questioned much, even though it could be questioned. But canonically, you have that power to do. You know, but I think synodal leadership wants us to use consultation, listening, dialogue before we make a discernment about a particular decision.
Mm.
I think the format is this it has always been part of the church.
Hmm.
The format of coming together, listening to differences of opinion, having heated arguments, having a dialogue, and making a final decision. We talk about majority, taking a votation in our meetings and all that, and that's how the church always decided upon things. Not always on the majority of the votes, but coming together, discerning, and making a decisions. The 21 councils of the Catholic Church, from the Council of Nicaea to the Second Vatican Council, is simply an example of synodal spirituality. Different historical moments, emphasize certain things over the other things. But I think in the last century, I think we have become even more aware of the importance of showing a synodal leadership in the church, in the world.
Do you think it was missing? Or do you think it was not recognized? Something shifted, and we're coming
Certainly.
back to that. So what would you say
Absolutely.
to that?
Absolutely. And think of your parents or grandparents and how they saw church,
Hmm.
how they saw priests,
Hmm.
right? It was different. It was certainly
Right.
different. And those priests who lived, let's say, 80 years ago, the way that they saw what the church as an institution was different, and how they saw as a priest was different. And how it was different, that was shaped by the narratives that were going on in their times about the church, about the role of the church in the world today. And that has certainly changed, and the church, I think, has learned it the hard way. The whole secularization in the Western Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere, Europe and North America. Church is not the center of the city anymore.
Hmm.
It's not the center of people's lives anymore. So you are ripped of the power that we used to have as a church, as an institution. So the power is gone. You wonder, okay, what happened? It's almost like God hitting on the head. Okay, all right, realize now. That sort of thing. That was one, and then the second thing was two world wars, and the whole Shoah, the killing of the massacre of the Jewish people, and all that. So those things, also create ripple effects of what is the role of the church here. What are we teaching about our relationship with the Jewish people, our relationship with people of other faith, our relationship with other Christian denominations? We can be killing each other or excommunicating each other. So that's not a good example. Oh, that's the second reason. And the third one is the whole sexual abuse crisis in the church, which again called for authenticity of the church. A lot of people, the church lost its credibility.
Hmm. Oh,
And those
that's a great point. Like, I just want to pause there for a second because
Mhm.
it does apply, obviously, to the church, also applies to just leadership in general, which
Of
is
course, of
without
course.
the authenticity, credibility is lost.
Mhm.
Wow.
And because of that, all those things were kind of were emerging. And then the whole end of colonialism in the mid 20th century is also a turning point for the church around the globe. Until the mid 20th century, most of the European bishops were the missionaries all over the world, especially in Africa and Asia. But now, beginning, from early 20th century onwards, there is secularization, coming out, increasing in the northern hemisphere. But then faith is increasing in the southern hemisphere, in parts of Africa, Central America, South America, Asia, parts of Asia, India. And so the Catholic faith was transmitted through the means of colonization for a long time. The colonization has ended now,
Mm.
right? So how do you navigate that? We can be uh, transmitting the faith as someone in North America would follow faith, or in part of Italy would follow faith. And Latin was a common language of the Mass because it could unite the whole of Europe at one time, and so it was useful. Now, people like, I'm from Tamil Nadu. I'm not going to learn another language to read Bible. I
Mhm.
read Bible in Tamil.
Right.
And so the importance of language, importance of incorporating cultures, importance of realizing that the northern culture, the European culture, European way of doing things, European languages are not the necessary. It's not the Catholic faith doesn't have to be expressed as someone would express it in Europe.
Sure.
It calls
Sure.
for a change of means, right? And so all those things are surfacing, and that's what brings the bishops all around the world to come together at Vatican II.
Mm.
And that's where this whole different approach to leadership changes, because before the end of colonization, the church leaders were on the top, right? They were the top, the colonization, right, and all that. And so it was very hierarchical because of the structures of
Right.
colonization, because of the structures of the politics of Europe and all that. So all those things changed. It demanded a different way of approach, different way of leadership. Otherwise, the faiths would not have increased in South America, Central America, parts of, countries of Africa and Asia.
It's not too different from leaders who rely on formal leadership versus informal leadership, right? Where through authority, they are great leaders
Mm-hmm.
or not,
Mm-hmm.
versus leading
Mm-hmm.
from the heart. So at some point you were very head focused in this concept, and I'm assuming through your leadership you have shifted to your heart, or maybe that happened in the beginning. I'm not sure. At what point did it shift, and how does it show up in the day to day? Like, how have you seen this type of leadership working in everyday life for you as a leader?
As I said earlier, I was born and raised in Tamil Nadu. Tamil is one of the oldest languages, one of the classical languages that's still spoken and written. We have a tremendous wealth of literature. It goes back to, centuries before the birth of Christ.
Mm.
So I am fond of those early literatures. And one of the nice things about the Tamil culture, which was, whole of South India for a very long time, right? You know, and because it's surrounded by waters, it's tropical climate, it's hot, but not too terribly hot like a desert,
Mm.
not too cold like to a point of having snow. So you can cultivate all through the year. And that is why it was very rich. Everybody wanted to come to South India, right, to trade. And that's why we have the Portuguese Indian Company, English Indian Company, and Dutch and French East Indian companies from the 1600s who came to trade with us. And that was the reason why Columbus wanted to come, to find a shorter route to India, and he ended up in the Americas, right? Right. So he was on his way to India, and somehow landed in the Americas and thought he was an Indian. And to this day, the Native Americans are called as Indians.
Yeah.
And so it had a tremendous connection with the rest of the world. And somehow one of the things that I admire in the Tamil culture, it's its high standard of ethics, morality. And there's one proverb that I'm very fond of. It's almost like a coat of arms, for, for my life, if you will. Um, it goes Yadum ure Yavarum Kelir. Okay, that's how it goes, and it's from the a few centuries before the birth of Christ, like 4th century, 5th century, around the time. Not sure exactly, but the meaning of it is this: Yadum ure. Every town is my hometown. Yavarum Kelir. Everybody is my relative. Okay, so there's one proverb there. And then another proverb that really I'm fond of, that I'm fascinated by, is ஒன்றுபட்டால் உண்டு வாழ்வே ஒற்றுமை நீங்கிடில் இங்கு அனைவருக்கும் தாழ்வே, something like that. Meaning, there is life if we come together. There will be deaths if we don't come together.
Hmm.
So somehow, even in those earliest, centuries, 2,000 years back at least, somehow the culture, the language was able to see that vision, a global vision for the world. There is life, there is prosperity, there's well-being, there's health, there's advancement. If we begin to see that every town is my hometown, every
Yeah.
person is my relative, we
Yeah.
have to
Oh,
come
they're
together for
beautiful.
one
Yeah.
life, right?
They're
And I think,
beautiful.
yeah, and I always liked the Tamil literature, and I still do. I love listening to it, and it's very easy language. So if you want to learn, let me know. It's only 247 letters.
I have your email address. You got it.
Okay, so 247 letters. If you have it down, if you have them down, you know how to read and write Tamil. So,
Okay, good. Oh
so I
my.
think, I was fascinated by that. We were taught in schools, and those are some of the concepts that still remain fresh in my heart, you know. And then, understanding of the church, the issues of authority at different time periods of the, church was not reconciling. Well, I was not able to reconcile that image of the church, which is using authority as a means of service.
Hmm.
And I was not able to reconcile that image of the church with the cultural image of service and community. And I think when I read about synodality, I think it was homecoming for me,
Mm, mm.
to kind of connect my culture and faith together, and then see that I think, and then also I'm proud to say that, this vision of synodality, the Tamil people, my ancestors were able to see that, 20, 2000 years ago, quite a few centuries ago. And I'm sure in every culture, people who were visionaries were able to see that image as well. And I'm just glad and proud that someone from my culture was able to see that so many centuries ago.
Yes, yes. Well, and I think we went down this road because I was asking about compared to servant leadership. And what I had seen was that I mean, of course, servant leadership is totally giving and being there and doing for others.
Mhm.
And I have to say there's been something off for me about that because of that hierarchy we were talking about. I find that whenever someone is less than or greater than, they're off balance. There's something wrong there, right? Where you're not greater than or less than as a human being, nor am I. And that is so when I heard your concept, it
Mhm.
felt very peaceful to me because it is equivalent. And when I went back and reviewed the servant leadership, which is wonderful and people aspire to it and I applaud them for it, there is, compared to this, there is a little bit of imbalance and there is a little bit of less than or greater than versus being on the same plane. So
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
really do. Would you agree with that? Because I love this
Mhm.
concept. Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely. And again, synodality is servant leadership model for sure. Then that goes right back
Sure.
to the
Sure.
gospel where
Sure. Sure.
Jesus himself teaches his disciples, I came to serve, not to be served, but he's the
Mm-hmm.
leader. He's the
Yep.
Messiah. He's the Son of
Yeah.
God. He's the leader of the band. And then he washes the feet of the disciples,
Mm-hmm.
before the Last Supper, showing them that this is, I want to be a servant to all of you. And that's what you are to become.
Mm-hmm.
I'm appointing you as
Mm-hmm.
the servants of all these people, and then the whole concepts of, if you exalt yourself, you will be, humbled. If you humble yourself, you will be exalted. The last will be first, the first will be last,
Right.
all
Right.
those, images. Jesus is, constantly deconstructing the image of leadership
Mm-hmm.
in the mind of the disciples. For them, the leadership was authoritative and being in power, being in control, having the military power. And Jesus constantly reminds them, no. And that's why, when Jesus reveals his, possible death, Peter says, no, this can't happen to you. I have a different image of Messiah for you, And Jesus says, get behind me, Satan, Just a moment ago, he said, I'm going to build my church upon you. You are the rock, And in the very next sentence, it says, you're Satan, You're not thinking
Mm-hmm.
like God does. I think, if you apply that, any leadership style that's other than servant model leadership, is almost satanic if you apply that interpretation,
Right.
And so recognizing that and embracing that vision is crucial, servant leadership. But at the same time, it does not get rid of the structures.
Hmm.
It does not get rid of the hierarchy because hierarchy and structures are so crucial. Otherwise, the whole institution will fall apart, right? If something goes wrong, if there is no leader, who nobody will take responsibility for what's happening in an institution. So my position in servant leadership model is not necessarily an equal amount of power. There will be in an institution variations in the level of power that each one has, and it should
Hmm.
be like that, in my
Hmm.
opinion. But
Hmm.
I think the disposition with which a leader is called to work, someone who is up on the hierarchies to work, is from the disposition of service and ministry rather than lording it over the subjects.
Right. Right. So I would love your perspective on another concept. We talked about being perfect earlier. Another concept that I see within my clients will be as we get underneath certain topics, we dig deeper and deeper and deeper, and almost always is this shaky ground that they're standing on called worthiness. And I would love to get your perspective and share that perspective because it is, and most people that are just hearing this for the first time would say, "Oh no, I don't have any worthiness issues." And yet I find that there's almost always that shaky ground that we're standing on. So if you could shed a little bit of light on that topic, I would be grateful.
Oftentimes leaders, you name religious leaders, political leaders, cultural leaders, name it. Oftentimes whose leaders who come across as authoritative, suppressive and more controlling, oftentimes they're so afraid in their heart,
Mm,
they that's how I see it. Whenever I have those issues, if I have a moment of self-reflection, I go back and see there are some fears,
mm,
there are some self-doubts,
mm,
and that's the primary reason why people choose to use their authority
mhm,
as a means to do whatever they are called to do. But on the other hand, if you and I can take time in our daily lives to shape our worthiness based upon the character that we have, then we will not be afraid of being taken advantage of when a leader is nice, when a leader is smiling, when a leader is courteous, when the leader is service oriented. Oftentimes leaders are afraid, oh my gosh, if I'm the boss of this company and if I'm nice, if I am courteous, if I am listening, people around me are going to take advantage of me and all that. So we are afraid. And people do want to be service oriented, but they are afraid. I think that's where our spirituality comes in handy, helps us to handle the fear, you
because
know.
at our core
And
true level, we want to be whole. We want to
mhm,
be giving, courteous, vulnerable, right? We want all those things. And it's when I think of it as the ego, right? Or
mhm,
when we
absolutely.
get into these emotions that are not in the center of us and
Mhm, mhm,
we let that get the better of us
mhm,
and
mhm,
we start to feel unworthy.
mhm, mhm, mhm. In other words, we if our worth is on the position we hold, I
Mm,
don't think we will be good leaders. If my identity is a post that I have, is the leadership position that I have, then I will be so afraid not to lose it, and I will do anything to hold on to it.
mm,
But if my worthiness is the person that I have become, that I am becoming, that I want to become by means of this role of leadership, then I don't care. Nobody is going to be in the same leadership position forever. Then why bother? Be it 3 years or 6 years. Do the service that you can and focus on the person that you are becoming the character that you are building for yourself. And I think if we can begin to focus on the worthiness that lies there, I think we'll be better leaders. But I think it's hard in the competitive world. It's hard for a lot of folks to realize that. But the stark reality is that no leader is going to be in that same position forever. Whether you're good or bad, so be good then.
Right, 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 right. So if a person is repeatedly spending more time in that place of whether it's fear, anxiety, and then leaning into hierarchical formal authority, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Is there a recommendation? You alluded to it. If you could spend a little bit more time there, how would you ask them or suggest that they get more balanced and back to
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
core informal leadership
Hmm.
whole self?
Hmm. I think the perfect test would be, let's say you have a company and you have 25 staff under you. Okay, you walk in and then they treat you in a certain way. Each one treats you in a certain way, and because you're the boss. And imagine that you're not the boss anymore. And you walk into that same company. Will they still treat you the same way? Will they still look at you the same way? Will they still relate with you the same way? And that will tell,
Hmm. Choice.
right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And so recognizing, you know, the whole relationships that I have built in this company, in this work setting or ministry setting, are they real? Or are they based solely upon my position? Or are those relationships built because of me as a person? You know, and I think if you and I have built that, I think what do we need? I don't think any amount of money can give that sense of fulfillment in life where, you're still treated the same way, 10 years after you lost that job. You know.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I've experienced that myself here with this work, where it's just been incredibly fulfilling to the point of being moved in such a way. Okay, so that being said, where is love in business? I think in the United States we have one word for love, and other cultures have three, four, five words
Mhm.
that mean love and different types of love. So maybe that's why we are so divided like church and state, right? There's this line of love and then there's work, and the two shall not meet. What what is your what is the answer to that? Where does love fit into business?
And I think, I'm again reminded of all the words that we have in Tamil
Mm,
to mean the word love. Anbu means generally love. Pasam means the love between, children and parents. Nesam is friendship.
mm,
Kadal is, love between the lovers. And Parivu is compassion, a love for someone who
mm-hmm,
is
mm-hmm,
in a
mm-hmm,
state of receiving help. Arpanam is also love. Arpanam means dedication.
mm,
You know, the love that you show for what you're supposed to do is arpanam. The the meaning of the word is you give yourself fully, and it's the same word that we use for consecrated life in Tamil. You give yourself fully to what you do.
yes.
Arpanam, so the life of consecration, the priests and religious brothers, so, and that's not a religious word. We have just taken that word and started using it in the Catholic circle, but the word itself is dedication, dedication to the service, that we're called to do is the love that we show. And I think that's what I think of. The love of the leader lies in the desire to serve. How many people have I served today by being the leader of this institution, company?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the numbers are needed. Yes, the statistics need to be considered. And yes, we are oftentimes competing with other companies of the same field or other countries or cultures or whatever. There's competition. Yes, there's always time for, place for improving strategies and the way we do things. But at the end of the day, I think at the end of our lives, I don't think we will look at, okay, how much money did I make? How much success did I make? I think the only thing that will bring us peace when we're not able to do anything is the amount of service that we have done. Because you and I will not be able to do. There will be a
Right.
day that we will be able to do nothing but be a burden to others. And we will be.
Hmm.
And when we are burdened to others, I think the only consolation, only peace that you and I can have is by cherishing those moments that we were able to give fully ourselves to others when we were able.
Almost like the ecosystem of our
Mhm.
lives, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no.
Well, I was going to ask you of a favorite touchstone or a favorite passage, and you already shared that. So I'm happy that you were able to give that to us. As we're wrapping up here, I would love to know a little bit more about maybe your role within the retreat center, and if
Mhm,
there's anything you want to share about the retreat center.
mhm. So the Capuchin Retreat Center is in Washington Township,
Okay.
Michigan, 28-mile Mount Vernon. It's right next to the Stony Creek Metro Park.
Mm.
It's sitting on a 95 acres of beautiful grounds with almost 85 acres of trails. And we have 47 rooms with private bathrooms. We have a chapel that can host about 80 people, 90 people. We have a we have a couple of conference rooms, and we do weekend retreats for men, women, couples, young adults, on a particular theme. The theme for this year is um, a lifetime of blessedness retreat on the Beatitudes
Mm.
in the Gospel of Matthew. So people come on Friday evening at about 6:30, and then they leave on Sunday afternoon. And the cost this year is $280. 280 or 85. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But they come and stay for a couple of days, pray, rest, meditate. We have 5 talks, 2 masses, time for confession, time for spiritual direction, a healing service. It's all built into the retreat, and it's a powerful weekend for a lot of men and women. Because these are silent retreats. Retreatants don't talk among themselves. They are welcome to talk to us, but they don't talk among themselves. So there's this safe environment of silence. Nobody's going to talk to you or bother you or challenge you, anything of that sort, nothing of that sort. So you're completely free to embrace God and the insights that are provided here and take that time away with God. And I think in the situations of our busy lives today, I think everyone deserves to have a time alone with God and with his or her own conscience. And here we are here to facilitate them, to walk with them, to journey with them
Mhm.
during those weekends, so that they can also recognize how God loves them and forgives them and provides for them.
Well, and there's something beautiful there about this idea of reducing the noise.
Mhm,
And again, I take that back to, the topic of leadership, and that, boy, wouldn't that be great if we could shut down the noise and find our center again, and
mhm,
how we are whole and loved. And it actually makes me ask yet another question, which is about vulnerability. I think vulnerability is a scary thing for a lot of people,
mhm, mhm,
and especially leaders,
mhm,
for the reasons that we've already talked about.
mhm,
And how would you counsel someone to lean into vulnerability along with these other ideas that
mhm,
we've talked about today?
mhm. Again, it comes back to being honest with yourself. This is how I feel. You don't
Yeah.
have to tell the whole world how you feel on social media, but can you be honest with yourself? This is how I feel. I don't feel great today. I'm angry with God. I feel like I want to question God. I want to pick up a fight with God, there are moments that happen in the life of Jesus too, right before the passion, he's so afraid and he tells his companions to be with him. Hey, I need you. Pray for me. Pray, stay together, And then he goes to the Garden of Gethsemane and then he's so vulnerable and afraid and his sweat becomes like blood drops, And time and again throughout the gospel, Jesus does that whenever he wanted some affirmation from God and a sense of clarity, deeper clarity, He always flees to the mountains to pray, to be by himself. He takes a few companions with him, but he's not in the crowd, certainly.
No.
And I think that's the space, the atmosphere that we want to provide to people who long to be connected with God, to connected with their conscience and face whatever that they don't want to face, that they are afraid to face.
Right. Really great conversation. I loved every minute of it. And I want to keep asking you questions, quite frankly, but we are wrapping up and out of time. And I guess I'll leave you with this. What do you do on the day to day? I think I have an inkling already. What do you do on the day to day to be your best self?
I think having a moment before I begin the day, even if it is 10 minutes, to do some exercise, a little walking or running, even if it is just for 10 minutes. That's one, taking care of the physical well-being, and then taking care of the emotional well-being, taking time to talk with my parents, with my sister and family, friends, good friends. I'm so blessed with so many wonderful, good friends and taking the time to call them, that's too keeping my emotional well-being alive. And then thirdly, having a moment of kind of self-reflection, the examen of conscience, as we say in the Christian tradition, but it's basically a self-reflection of, okay, what did I do yesterday? Oh, that was probably not the best version of myself. And how could I be, how could I face that? How could I change that? How can I rectify that today? That. And then the gratitude ritual, thinking of three things that I'm grateful for as I begin the day. And then bringing to prayer, what is my fear today? And what is my guilt today? And what are what are the things that I'm angry at today? Those are the questions that I bring in prayer. And then I pray for myself and pray for a few other people who might have requested prayer. If I can manage to do that within a half hour or half hour to an hour in the early part of the day, I feel very grounded.
Nice. Well, today I am grateful for you.
Thank you.
I'm grateful for this conversation, truly.
Me too.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I just finished up my conversation with Brother Antony Julius Milton, and it was moving for me personally. I hope that you got a lot out of it. Were moved and also are inspired in how you show up, not even as a leader, as a human being, as a leader over yourself. That's really what this is about. This leadership is about you stepping up to be and daring to be the best version of yourself. It was his pure essence that to me was very motivating. You could feel how grounded he was, how I don't want to say morality, but like his philosophical basis and how he talked about the Tamil, not so much Tamil leadership, but the way of life and walking with instead of walking in front of or walking behind, right? So I love that he shared teachings that supported all these concepts that we brought up, especially towards the end. So the concepts of like informal and formal leadership, he alluded to that, or the concept of worthiness and love. I think we, especially as Americans, shy away from, any kind of love, or because we only have one word for love, and it doesn't really apply to business, but there is a place for that whole love in business. And it really is just asking us to be whole people and to bring all of ourselves and be the best version of ourselves, right, into the equation. Vulnerability, moving from the head to the heart. And actually, that particular concept, I felt myself, because prior to this conversation last night, I was going through my notes and I was having a very head moment because I didn't feel it. I didn't feel the flow. And I was starting to add some questions and, talking to myself and getting kind of anxious. I thought I hadn't really shared this angle and I was feeling a little bit bad about that. So now I have a little anxiety, a little bit of guilt, a little bit of stuff. I'm going to add it to this recording at the end, my little breakdown that I had with him when we first met this morning. We had about 3 minutes prior to recording, and I'll include it just to be fully transparent and vulnerable. So head to heart. Also, that idea of being perfect, and of course, all of it coming together again to be the best version of yourself. So I hope that you enjoyed this conversation, that you got something out of it, and it helps you be the best version of yourself. Have a great day, everyone. You have been listening to the Charging Up Leadership podcast, and I am your host, Heidi Frye, charged up, plugged in, and sending you energy, light, and love. Find me at HeidiFrye.com. And don't forget to check out my book, The Light Switch, available on Amazon, in your local bookstores, or on my website. The Charging Up Leadership podcast is created, hosted, and produced by Heidi Frye. Theme music is by Yevchen Anoychenko from Pixabay. Okay, terrific. Well, I wanted to say that last night I was going over my notes and freaking out a little bit because once I get into it, I feel more inspired and connected. And I'm like, well, I didn't tell him I was going to ask these questions. And I started getting weird. And so this morning, oh, it's going to make me cry. Whew. So this morning
You okay?
yeah, I'm fine. I was in meditation this morning and I asked and I had this calm, and my eyes were closed and all of a sudden just all these tears were just like falling out of my eyes down my face as I heard
Mm-hmm.
trust yourself. And then I went to, so you were my teacher today, right? And then I went to, but I didn't tell him what I was going to say. And then I heard he'll be fine. So that is what humbly brings me to this conversation. So terrific. Yeah, I'm fine. I was in meditation this morning and I asked to be filled with the Holy Spirit, which is what I do when I read at church. I'm a lector. And and I had this calm, and my eyes were closed, and all of a sudden just all these tears were just like falling out of my eyes, down my face as I heard,
Mhm.
trust yourself. And then I went to, so you were my teacher today, right? And then I went to, but I didn't tell him what I was going to say. And then I heard he'll be fine. It's good for him
Mhm.
too.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that is what humbly brings me to this conversation. So
Mhm.
terrific. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Okay. Do you have any other questions for me before we begin?
I don't think so. Let's see where the Lord leads us. Do we want to start with a quick prayer?
That would be terrific. Yeah, that would
Okay.
be great. Yeah.
In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Loving and gracious God, we thank you and praise you for bringing us together to have this conversation, to share what you have taught us, to share so that others also might be inspired by the love, the mercy, the providence that you have for every single person on this planet. Lead us and guide us by your Spirit. Bless our words, bless our insights. May this conversation, may this time, may all those who listen to it find this conversation to be helpful and inspiring and be a time of your grace. We make these prayers through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Oh, see, I got the tears going again. All right, now I have to pull myself together. Yeah.
It's good that we can break down so that we can be put back together once again.
Yes. Okay. Well, yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. Woo. Well, yeah, that's a terrific way for us to start. Thank you for that. That was lovely.
You're welcome.
Um, all right, there was something else I was going to ask you. Oh, you are a priest, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I'm actually going to start there once we start talking. So,
Okay.
I'm going to just welcome you but you like to be called brother, correct?
Yep,
Okay.
Brother Antony
And
Julius.
Brother Julius, do you like Antony Julius or which do you prefer?
Brother Antony Julius is good.
Okay. And because I remember being introduced to you, my mom and I were at the retreat center and
hmm
she named off everybody because you were all standing there and she referred to you as Father Julius. And I was
hmm
just like so confused.
hmm
Okay, I have to just make sure that I'm not like weeping here before we even begin. All right. Woo. Okay, so I will just welcome you on, and then I'm going to ask you a question. We'll be off and running. So, of course, I have the opportunity to edit afterward. I don't normally do that. I like the organicness of the conversation. If anything, I have talked to people before who have a lot of, myself included, a lot of ums and ahs, and I'll maybe edit that, but not really the content portion of it. So. Okay, ready? And you're ready because I have thrown a couple extra questions in there. So, okay. Yeah, you're good. Okay, here we
And
go.
then also,
I
I'm
can
sorry.
feel the wetness of my.
And I also, in the beginning, I would like to share my, story of like how I got to the Capuchins, which forms, how I believe and how I perceive leadership
Yes,
and ministry.
yes.
So,
That's actually question number two. Okay, so here we go. Good morning, Father, Brother, Antony. I have to do that over again because on the intro, would you rather it be father or brother?
brother is good.
Okay. Okay. Welcome to the podcast, Brother Antony Julius Milton. So happy to have you here today.